Welcome back. Traditional media is barely hanging on. Musica stores have crashed and Ster-Kinekor has gone into voluntary business rescue. That all happened this week. They all say they've suffered due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown, but were already facing fierce competition from digital platforms. This begs the question, can traditional entertainment media keep up with the digital? Let's discuss this then. I'm joined by Stuff magazine publisher Toby Shapshak, joining us from Johannesburg tonight. Toby, always good to see you. So let's start with Musica. The announcement this week that all stores will be shutting down by latest end of May. Safe to say the writing was always on the wall then?
Yes, terribly sad, isn't it? I mean, the music industry's had a double whammy, as it were. First came file sharing and Napster and the like, and then came the iStore and streaming services like Spotify that have completely invalidated the business model of a music store. You know, and Musica, to their credit, tried a lot of things. They try to bring in technology, gadgets, accessories for your smartphones, for your Kindles, and they did a really good job of sustaining a business model as long as they could. But like Ster-Kinekor, unfortunately, the COVID lockdown has just completely smashed their business model because people are simply not going into stores. If they can afford to do it, they're still not going there. So, sorry, not stores and shopping malls. So no one going into Musica, no one going into see cinema. And of course, both of these business models, as you say, Thembekile, have been under threat for a long time by other forms of entertainment, which are digital streaming. So when I grew up, there was nowhere else to go to see a movie on a Saturday night or a Friday night than to go to the cinema. Now, there are, 4 or 5 different streaming services you can subscribe to right now on top of DSTV, which would substitute that kind of entertainment. We all have large, or certainly the middle class have large TV screens in our rooms, our TV rooms. We have, fantastic audio systems, and we can watch a movie at home, or we can have entertainment at home. Certainly during COVID, where you do not want to go and sit in a closed cinema environment for an hour and a half or 2 hours with a whole bunch of other people coughing and sputtering. So I'm sorry to say, I feel terribly for the cinemas because I grew up in cinema and that, beautiful moment when everything went dark and there was a silence and, then the movie started. That unfortunately is gone. That excitement's gone. That business model is gone. Why? Because there is an alternative, and the alternative is just so much better. You can stay at home. The popcorn's always warm. You don't have to stand in a queue. And your television is as good as, and your sound system as good as we used to get in a cinema.
And Toby,
but of course, COVID has just exacerbated.
We're a little pressed for time, Toby, so I want to jump in there very quickly and go back to the point you're making about Musica, how they tried to introduce various ways in which the business could stay alive. But I'm wondering what it was about those interventions that made them unsuccessful in an increasingly digital world.
Well, fundamentally, their value proposition is music, and yet who buys CDs anymore? Who buys LPs? Who buys tapes anymore? LPs perhaps are, DJs and other aficionados. There's a very niche market for that, but there is no mass market left anymore for people buying CDs or some kind of music on a media. We're all going to subscribe to Spotify and Apple Music and Audible and Amazon Prime Music. It would be a superfluous amount of money to go and buy a CD on top of all of that. And most people subscribe to at least one of those streaming services, Spotify obviously being the best value for money, especially the family pack. You can listen to absolutely everything, and podcasts and audiobooks and why would you want to go spend money into a physical store to buy an actual CD unless it's something, deeply sentimental? I kind of threw away all my CDs, and the one that I kept was, arguably the greatest CD of the CD era, which was Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. So, it's just the change in technology. As wonderful as LPs were, CDs were better. As wonderful as CDs are, streaming is better. that's just the way technology grows, and it's terribly unfortunate for those businesses and those people employed by their businesses. But that's the changing nature of technology, and unfortunately exacerbated and accelerated by the COVID lockdowns.
And final question, Ster-Kinekor in that statement announcing the voluntary business rescue last night was saying that, look, they were actually doing quite well up until February last year. That's a month before we had the lockdown take effect, right? But what is the future of movies then? Because COVID-19 is not going to go away. We've got the big movie houses relooking how they release their products, some now going straight for the Netflix route or other forms of release. So what is the future for the cinema business?
Look, it's hard to say. I mean, we're talking about South Africa, which has always had two dominant chains and some very notable independence theatres. But, you know, in the States, of course, the grand bazaar that is a cinema launch is still hugely sought after, as are the profit margins of cinema. Cinema is vastly more profitable than a streaming service. And there's a lot of contentiousness around whether to release straight to streaming and whether that's good for the customer or bad for the production houses that spend, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars on production. So I don't think we've seen the end of this argument yet, but it does unfortunately look like we've seen the end of Ster-Kinekor.
Toby Shapshak, always good to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time tonight.